It's not political for me. For me, the political part is over. He won. And, growing up, I was taught to respect the office. So, Nelly's here.
And you did get a little backlash, but you were like, whatever, I don't care. I'm doing what I want to do. This is, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but you were really cool about it. You handled it well. You came forward and you talked about it. A lot of people wouldn't do that. Why did you come forward and talk about it?
Well, because I think it's important that, we showed some people have their own opinions about things, and sometimes things can get a little bit hazy and in a way that everybody feels the same way about everything, and that's just not it. I think certain people have an outlook, and I've always believed that you got to walk through the fire sometimes to get results, and regardless of what you feel about it, we as a people, and I mean, my heritage as far as being African American, we've always had to work with people that we may not have always agreed with to get things done. And I think that struggle continues. But at the end of the day, if the men and women of this country can put their life on the line for a president that they may not have voted for, I can definitely perform.
So that was artist Nelly giving response in an interview. He did a couple of those following his performance during the inaugural activities for Donald Trump. A lot has been said about him and Snoop and others who have participated, who showed up, who in some cases said kind things about Donald Trump. Angela, I know you had a clip of Snoop that you wanted to throw into. Can we toss to that real quick?
Remember when we were kids? I don't know where you from. It's probably different. Mm-hmm. When we were kids, no white kids wanted to be black. None of them. Now, braids, tattoos,
they even call each other the N-word.
Hello.
Yeah.
So what do you think that's doing to their people up top? It's a brainwash.
You
get what I'm saying? So we got to restore order. Because in a minute, they going to be politicians. And if they acting like niggas, then they going to be looking out for niggas.
I understand.
So we need to fuck this shit back up so that way they can get back in their mind that they against us. When it's too late now because you have so many interracial relationships and people who have became family members. My grandson is white.
Yeah, I'm interracial. I'm black and white.
No, my grandson is white, so I have no racism in me. I love white people, but I don't like Donald Trump.
So, that was Donald Trump. I'm sorry, that was Snoop making some comments about Donald Trump, and
that was from that was not recent. I just was saying that's not a recent. That's the same interview where he said, if people are pushing back on me for not liking Donald Trump, your listeners are racist. That kind of thing. So those clips have been overplayed. I think that it is important in this discussion to be able to hold space for nuance. I'm gonna say some stuff that I don't agree with because I'm conflicted, and I'm definitely gonna say some stuff that y'all don't agree with.
Yeah, no, that's real. Well, let me just example because Ilhan Omar tweeted out, Congresswoman Omar tweeted out about all the outrage that was being projected at entertainers who were at the inauguration appearing either in support or certainly in contract labor to the inauguration of Donald Trump. And she said, we're making all this noise about the artists, but what about the elected members of Congress, elected officials who went out and told America to be worried about this fascist who made the choice to be in attendance at the inauguration. So y'all, I know y'all saw the heat coming down. I know you probably had your own observations of what happened if you individually watched. I'm curious to know, one, what do you think about the clips that you heard? Nelly's obviously is in direct response to this moment. Snoop's is he actually has not, so far as I could tell, made a public comment about his participation in the inauguration. So we pull from previous comments, but how are you feeling about it? What did you think? I will just first posit that I was probably most demoralized, not by any of those comments necessarily, but by the pastor who we played at the beginning. My spirit was totally shook because I saw an arresting of the spirit and the moral of Dr. King being leveraged toward the most antithetical figure today in American politics to what King's vision was. And that felt like a low moment. I'm curious to know if there was one like that for y'all or how y'all responded to this one.
I'll stay on topic for this one with these clips we just heard from Nelly and Snoop Dogg. And I think the most disheartening thing for me about hearing that is the ignorance that is on display from both of them. I don't think performing for Donald Trump at inauguration is analogous to the people who serve in armed services by any means. I'm so disappointed to hear how Snoop Dogg describes his childhood. That may have been his experience, but certainly white kids wanted to be black when we were younger. In the 80s, they were into rap music, break dancing. They were wearing black hairstyle. There's never been a time.
Probably goes back further than that, right?
Right. Like literally since we've come here, all the swagger and everything we bring, all the culture we bring to this country has always been widely celebrated by people, not just across the country, but across the globe. And I wish he had that level of pride and level of information and knowledge, and was intellectually curious about it, which he painfully isn't. I did note that Nelly made his rounds. He didn't sit across from anybody black. I would have loved for Nelly to sit across from Joy Reid on MSNBC and have a conversation with her. Like, sitting across from a black woman is going to be a drastic. We're not going to go for the bullshit. So everything you said, you have to now stand on business and defend it. So it's just disappointing, to be honest with you. We talked, and even with Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, it's no disrespect to her, but I think it's quite the assumption that black folks do not hold that outrage for those elected officials, for those folks in business. I wonder what black people she's referencing, what black people she's talking to. On this very show, we have had all the smoke for people who show up. We have on the comments, people have smoke for people who show up. People we talk to in our group chat have felt a way about not only the elected officials who are engaging this administration as though it's normal, but also for entertainers. I don't really expect a lot from entertainers, but I do expect some level of acknowledgement of all the policies that will directly harm these people. Can I just say this about Snoop really quickly? He disappointed me during the LA mayor's race. He supported Rick Caruso, who was running against then Congresswoman Karen Bass, for the mayor of LA. Rick Caruso is a billionaire developer. He's known for, he built the Grove for our West Coast friends. He's was a candidate, but also a former Republican who switched parties not before he ran. He was the former president of the LA Board of Police Commissioners. He was a cop lover who promised to massively fund the LAPD. Now, we all remember Snoop's music and things that he said. He had a lot of fear mongering over this dubious crime wave that was happening in LA. And when it came down to what he actually did for community, it was, billionaire stuff, tax deductible contributions to protect him. And I remember Snoop, I can't remember the interview, so forgive me if this is not accurate, but there was something that Snoop asked him for that he did. Something for his football team or a field. And I remember hearing this like, my G, they bought you cheap. If that's all it took for you to endorse this man because you picked up the phone and asked him for something and he called you back, they bought you cheap. And I think when we organize, particularly as black women and black men, all the black men who are, right beside us in this fight, when we organize, we do so with the greater community in mind. So I don't know. I don't like it. I want these rappers to just, if you don't know, shutting up is free. 50 Cent, Kodak Black, Nelly, Lil Wayne, Sexy Red, I think she later changed, The Baby, and Snoop. This is just a handful of people who I have zero interest in. I would defy them to have some sort of intellectual conversation with anybody, but they're out there talking politics and being uplifted like mascots for white folks. And I find it gross.
I first wanted to just acknowledge that Ilhan's statement was not directed at black people. She was saying people generally in her tweet. I think
Forgive
that what
me,
she
Congresswoman.
Said, she's not gonna mind. She's not gonna mind. I think that it's important that we consider that there are multiple people on every side of this that haven't had the same smoke. So we say for all of the parties involved. I will say also this idea of buying you cheap is a bipartisan problem, right? Some of what I think I'm really wrestling right now is we have for a long time, Tiff, you reference it all the time too in conversations that you've had with LB, our friend Latasha Brown, who runs and is a co-founder Black Voters Matter, that we are often voting as a part of a harm reduction strategy. But what happens when the harm is not really reduced? What happens when the hemorrhage turns into a slow bleed, but you're bleeding no less? We're all bought for cheap. There were people calling Bill Clinton the first Black president because this motherfucker was playing a saxophone. So how cheap is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't even buy nothing. Like, he just, he down for us. Why? Look at the welfare laws. Look at the crime bills, right? Like, let's be kind of for real about that. So I think what I'm really wrestling with here is when you have people in elected office or who are running for office who are paying attention to your needs on a micro level, I'm not talking about a macro level, and you finally get the attention that you know that you deserve on a micro level, and you prioritize your politics based on that micro level interest. I am frustrated about it, but I get it. And I can use as an example, I'm so glad we talked about the pardon power first, because I can use an example, my rhetoric right now about the Biden administration based on the fact that they did not pardon Marilyn Mosby and what that means to me figuratively, despite having done the right thing for Marcus Garvey, who I would argue, I understand that's what his family wanted, but I would argue Marcus Garvey would be way more for the liberation of Black people who are still alive than clearing his record, because he's a hero to us no matter what, Black History Month or not. Whether it's that or it's the fact that there are people, the CBC members, who begged the Biden administration for executive order after executive order, or it's Arian Simone, who is fighting with every penny she had to protect the Fearless Fund, trying to fund us and couldn't get an executive action out of the administration for that. So your lip service is great, but your public service ain't. And then the people who don't do either, I don't know that it's not that much worse. And so when we talk about Snoop, and this is my personal bias, my blind spot, my point of hypocrisy, I love Snoop personally. I am frustrated by the decision he made to perform at an unofficial event during the inauguration, which is the crypto ball. The man who ran that ball is a former executive from PayPal. I don't know their business dealings. I suspect there is something. And then Nelly performed at an official event. Rick Ross also went to the crypto ball. I got personal beef with Rick Ross, Andrew, as you know, because he wouldn't come through to your election eve concert unless he was paid and flew out flown out on a private jet.
Yeah.
He was trying to get flued out. So for me, I've seen where, right, the capitalism comes into play. I understand their goals, and I also understand that many of their goals are to aid and support their community. I know firsthand the stuff that Snoop does for the community. I also know that some of the bias exists the same way that I said I would be going, caping probably a little bit harder for this administration had they done the right thing for Maryland at the end. He softened his tone and his rhetoric about Donald Trump because Harry O means everything to him. Harry O was pardoned at the end of Donald Trump's tenure. I understand the shift. I don't like it because my big letter politics always will supersede my little p politics, but that is something that I've learned from having worked in this space. That is a point of privilege that I have. I would rather engage in conversation with my brother and figure out all of his why than to tear him down anymore in the public, because I know the things that he's done for our folks far outweigh this moment. I do not like it. I would have preferred that he steered clear, but at the end of the day, these are the decisions they made. I respected what Nelly said. I still wish that he didn't go. I understand you respect the office. I try to respect the office. Right now, I'm having a hard time because I don't respect the office holder. I think that he's trying to undo democracy. It is hard for me to look at everything that happened in the last Trump administration and give this dude a pass. And that said, Andrew said he wanted to call this Black engagement with this administration. What does that look like? We really do need to have that conversation, because what we can't do for 4 years is just bash everything. We have to have somebody or somebodies to go in there and have a conversation. It could be a harm reduction conversation. It could be a progress conversation. If Marilyn told me that she's open to a pardon by this administration, there's somebody I got to send in there to have that conversation. But at the end of the day, justice isn't beholden to a party. Liberation isn't beholden to a party. It is only incumbent upon us to ensure that we are always advocating for the best interests of Black people. Now, when your personal interests get in the way of that, we got a problem, and we at least need to have a conversation.
But this seems interesting because our inauguration episode, I was reading the comments and everybody kept saying, yes, Angela, I agree with you, Angela. Angela, make a point. And I was like, what? I don't even remember because we had so many conversations. I'm like, what did she say? And I watched. And you did have all the smoke for people who sat down with Trump. You had all the smoke for President Biden for even sitting next to him. And it does sound a little bit like you're giving Snoop a pass or you're giving Nelly a pass when I don't know what they've done to earn that pass. Like, to me,
I just tried to explain it. Like, I think I've
heard that, but what you're doing is extending them understanding that you are not quick to extend to other people.
No,
if their intention is, oh, I needed this one thing and I was willing to go out there and tap dance and shuck and jive for the white man because he gave me this one thing. That's how I look at it. Then
I understand.
That's kind of a challenge. That's to say, well, I get it because you wanted this one thing, but to literally scream about Joe Biden even sitting next to him. I don't. To me, that is those 2 points run contrary to each other.
I think I tried to say at the beginning, I am resting in contradiction and hypocrisy myself. I tried to articulate that at the beginning. Trying to do that now. What I'm saying is, if I were in the same boat wanting a pardon, which I did for Marilyn Mosby, my rhetoric sounds remarkably different right now. My sentiment towards the Biden administration is remarkably different right now than had that pardon been received. I can still acknowledge that I thank God that Ketanji Brown was at the inauguration rocking cowrie shells. I can still acknowledge those things. And I think that part of what happens with us and that cheapens discourse is we lack any ability to have a nuanced conversation. I have a different set of standards for people who are in elected office and who told us something very specific about this man and how dangerous he is. Things that you and I all know, and Andrew all know firsthand. We witnessed the attack on our brother under that administration. So I'm clear about the dangers of it. I'm not clear if they know. That's why I said, and this may have gotten lost in all the other ish that I said, but I said, I want to have a conversation and be like, why? What beyond Harry O? What beyond respecting the office? What are you seeing as the opportunity for you being there? What policy priorities are you planning to carry in to this administration to help liberate Black people? And if you're not, please tell me why you thought going to do this was going to help.
I think if we had played that Snoop soundbite in the same fashion that we played the alleged Trump supporters on a Chicago street, or if he was just a random person on the street and you heard him say, I love white people, I'm not racist, my grandson is white. By the way, if he's your biological grandson, Snoop, he's Black.
He's mixed race.
He just meant he's biracial. He was talking about mixed families. He said, anyway, it's fine.
If he's his biological grandson, your grandson is Black. If it's not his biological,
I'm not arguing that. I'm saying I think he was trying to make a point that there's now a white person in his family, so he loves white people, not Donald Trump.
Either way,
we can dissect it. It's not ignorant to me. And also, I disagree around the point of, I do think that white kids want to be more Black now, at least on the West Coast, than they did when we were growing up. Snoop is older than me, but I think that's absolutely the case. I can show you proof of that. So that has shifted.
But you're saying that more white kids today want to be Black than they did in the 60s when the radios were integrated.
I wasn't alive in the 60s.
In the 70s. But there's reading, there's documentaries, there's so much
I'm
out
not
there
talking about them culturally appropriating our stuff. I think that there's a distinction, and I do think that on the West Coast, it is probably a little bit different. It's different on the East Coast for sure, from my experience in being in D.C. or in the Mid-Atlantic region. It's different. I will acknowledge
I think
that.
they've always wanted to be Black, but we can disagree there. But my point that I was making is Snoop, I think if he weren't Snoop and we just heard that soundbite, I wonder if we would have that same understanding, if we are willing to extend that same grace to somebody who isn't a personal friend or somebody who's not in the public eye.
I told you no. I told you I know firsthand the stuff that he's done. And that clip was to show that he said he did not like Donald Trump at that point. He's now since then said he has love for Donald Trump because of what he did for his friend Harry O.
And you feel the same way with Caruso, who's running against.
I don't have anything I don't know that dude. I don't know that dude.
No, but you know Congresswoman Karen Bass. And
But Karen, so here's the other part that we're going to have to wrestle with at some point, probably a larger podcast. Most elected officials don't reach out to entertainers and communities the way Andrew Gillum did. That is the truth.
So
that is something that has to be wrestled with. As a result of that, when people pounce on your weakness and they go to people and go to fortify and build relationships with folks, people like to be in close association and proximate to positions of power, no matter what side of the aisle you're on.
They willing to be used. They willing to be used.
I don't think that it's always about being used. I think it's a transaction. There's a reason why CBC founders said no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, just permanent interests. Okay, so I'm just saying that's something that Snoop has mastered.
And I don't know if celebrities help a campaign.
But he was at an unofficial event.
I'm narrating that I'm raising my hand for y'all who are listening and can't see.
I'm quiet. Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.